Welcome to Offbeat Editor, voiceover by Rizwan Karim. Recording under Offbeat Editor Audio. February 2013. The Los Angeles Police Department releases a piece of security footage to the public. 4 minutes of grainy surveillance video from inside an elevator. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. A young woman enters the elevator. She presses multiple buttons. The doors don't close. And then things get strange. She steps to the corner of the elevator, peering out into the hallway as if checking for something. Or someone. She presses herself against the wall, hiding. She steps out, looks left, looks right, walks back in, presses more buttons. The elevator still won't move. She starts making odd hand gestures, animated movements, like she's talking to someone we can't see, or counting on her fingers, or casting a spell. She jumps, she moves erratically. She steps out again, stands just outside the elevator doors and waits. Finally, she walks away. The elevator doors close. The footage ends. This video would be watched millions of times. Analyzed frame by frame, slowed down, enhanced, studied by amateur detectives across the internet. Because 3 weeks after this footage was recorded, the young woman in the elevator would be found dead, naked, floating in a water tank on the roof of one of Los Angeles' most notorious hotels. Her name was Elisa Lam. She was 21 years old. She was a tourist from Canada, traveling alone, staying at a place with one of the darkest histories in America. The Cecil Hotel. What happened to Elisa Lam? Was it murder, accident, mental health crisis, or something that defies explanation? The elevator footage is haunting. The circumstances of her death are bizarre. The location is cursed by decades of violence and tragedy, and the theories range from the logical to the absolutely terrifying. Tonight, we're going to examine every detail of this case. The evidence, the timeline, the dark history of the hotel, the investigations, the controversies. And we're going to try to answer the question that has haunted millions of people for over a decade. What really happened to Elisa Lam? Before we dive into the mystery, we need to understand who Elisa Lam was, because she wasn't just a victim in a disturbing case. She was a real person with hopes, struggles, and a life that mattered. Elisa Lam was born in 1991 in Vancouver, Canada, to immigrant parents from Hong Kong. She grew up in the suburb of Burnaby in a close-knit family. She had a younger sister and parents who worked hard to provide opportunities for their daughters. By all accounts, Elisa was intelligent, creative, and thoughtful. She was a student at the University of British Columbia, studying psychology and social work. She was passionate about fashion, photography, and writing. She maintained a blog called Ether Fields, where she wrote about her life, her thoughts, her struggles. And she was very open about those struggles. Elisa lived with bipolar disorder and depression. She was candid about her mental health challenges, writing extensively about her experiences with medication, therapy, and the daily battle to maintain stability. In her blog posts, she talked about feeling isolated, about the difficulty of connecting with others, about the exhausting work of managing a mental illness while trying to live a normal life as a young adult. But she also wrote about hope, about her dreams, about wanting to travel to see the world, to experience life beyond the confines of her daily routine. And in January 2013, she decided to do exactly that. Elisa planned a solo trip down the west coast of the United States. She would travel from Vancouver to San Diego, stopping in various cities along the way. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. It was meant to be an adventure, a chance to explore, to take photographs, to write, to prove to herself that she could be independent and capable despite her mental health challenges. Her family was concerned about her traveling alone given her condition, but Elisa reassured them. She promised to stay in touch regularly. She had her medications. She had a plan. On January 26, 2013, Elisa left Vancouver and began her journey south. For the first week, everything went smoothly. She posted on social media. She called home. She seemed to be having a wonderful time visiting bookstores, taking photos, exploring new cities. On January 28th, she arrived in Los Angeles. And she checked into the Cecil Hotel. Of all the hotels in Los Angeles, Elisa chose the Cecil. Maybe it was the price. The Cecil was cheap, especially for solo budget travelers. Maybe it was the location in downtown LA, convenient for exploring the city. Or maybe it was pure, tragic coincidence. Because the Cecil Hotel wasn't just any hotel, it had a reputation, a dark, disturbing history that stretched back decades. If there was ever a building that seemed cursed, it was the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1924 in downtown Los Angeles. It was built during the city's boom years, designed to cater to business travelers and tourists. With 700 rooms, it was one of the largest hotels in the city at the time. The building itself is imposing, 14 stories of brick and stone, with a European-style architecture that once spoke of elegance and sophistication. But the Cecil Hotel was built at the wrong time and in the wrong place. Within years of its opening, the Great Depression hit. Downtown Los Angeles, once a thriving center of commerce, began to decline. The neighborhood around the Cecil became known as Skid Row, a district of poverty, homelessness, addiction, and crime. The Cecil tried to maintain its standards, but as the decades passed, it became cheaper, seedier, more desperate. It transitioned from a respectable hotel to a weekly residential facility, renting rooms to people with nowhere else to go. And strange things started happening there. In 1931, just 7 years after opening, a guest named W.K. Norton checked into the Cecil and died by suicide, ingesting poison capsules in his room. In 1944, a 19-year-old woman named Dorothy Purcell checked into the hotel with her boyfriend. She went into labor unexpectedly, gave birth, and in a state of panic and confusion, threw the baby out the window. The infant died. Dorothy claimed she thought the baby was dead already and was in shock. It was a tragedy born of desperation and poverty. In 1947, Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, was seen at the Cecil Hotel bar in the days before her infamous murder. Some theorists believe she may have stayed there or met her killer there, though this has never been confirmed. In 1962, a woman named Pauline Otten jumped from a 9th-floor window and landed on a pedestrian below, killing both herself and the unlucky man, George Giannini. A murder-suicide by terrible accident. The suicides continued. Over the decades, at least a dozen people died by jumping from the Cecil Hotel's windows or roof. So many that the hotel eventually installed bars on some windows and restricted roof access. But the deaths didn't stop. In 1964, a woman named Goldie Osgood was found dead in her room, murdered. She had been raped, stabbed, and beaten. Her killer was never found. In 1992, a man was found dead in one of the rooms, having been there for several days before anyone noticed. The Cecil became known for death, violence, and decay. Its reputation grew darker with each passing year. And then it became known for something even more disturbing. The Cecil Hotel became home to serial killers. In 1985, one of America's most notorious serial killers walked through the doors of the Cecil Hotel and rented a room on the top floor. His name was Richard Ramirez. The media called him the Night Stalker. Between 1984 and 1985, Ramirez terrorized Los Angeles and San Francisco with a series of brutal home invasions, murders, sexual assaults, and burglaries. He killed at least 14 people, though the true number may be higher. He would break into homes in the middle of the night, kill or assault the occupants, and often leave satanic symbols at the scene. The randomness of his victims and the brutality of his crimes created widespread panic across California. During this killing spree, Richard Ramirez lived at the Cecil Hotel, room 1402, top floor. He would leave the hotel at night, commit his crimes, and return in the early morning hours covered in blood. He would strip naked in the hotel lobby, put his bloody clothes in a dumpster, and take the elevator back to his room. Hotel staff noticed, but in the Cecil, people minded their own business. No one said anything, no one called the police. Ramirez was eventually caught in August 1985, not because of anything at the Cecil, but because a victim survived and identified him. He was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death. He died in prison in 2013, the same year Elisa Lam stayed at the hotel. But Ramirez wasn't the only serial killer connected to the Cecil. In the early 1990s, another serial killer was living at the Cecil Hotel. His name was Jack Unterweger, an Austrian journalist and convicted murderer who had been released from prison and reinvented himself as a writer and celebrity in Europe. Unterweger came to Los Angeles in 1991, ostensibly to write about crime and prostitution for European publications. He stayed at the Cecil Hotel. While in Los Angeles, he murdered at least 3 sex workers, strangling them in a manner identical to the murder he'd committed in Austria years earlier. He returned to Europe, continued killing, and was eventually arrested in 1992. He was convicted of 9 murders and died by suicide in his cell shortly after his conviction. So we have 2 serial killers, both staying at the Cecil Hotel, both using it as a base of operations while they hunted and killed people in Los Angeles. Is that a coincidence, or is there something about the Cecil that attracts darkness? Some people believe the hotel is cursed, that the accumulation of so much death, violence, and suffering has left a psychic imprint on the building. That negative energy permeates the walls. Others point out that the Cecil's location in Skid Row, combined with its cheap rates and lack of security, simply made it an attractive option for people living on the margins, including criminals. Whatever the reason, by 2013, the Cecil Hotel had a reputation. It was known as the deadliest hotel in Los Angeles. Ghost hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and dark tourism fans were drawn to it. And in January 2013, Elisa Lam checked into this hotel, completely unaware of its history. She was assigned a shared room initially. The Cecil offered budget dormitory-style rooms for backpackers. But after a few days, hotel management moved her to a private room on the 5th floor. Why? The official reason was that her roommates complained about her odd behavior. What that behavior was, exactly, has never been fully explained. but it was concerning enough that the hotel separated her from other guests. Room 506, that was Elisa's room. And from that room on the night of January 31st, 2013, Elisa Lam would vanish. January 31st, 2013, the last day anyone saw Elisa Lam alive. Let's go through what we know about her final hours. Elisa had been in Los Angeles for 3 days. She'd been exploring the city, visiting bookstores and shops, taking photographs. She'd been in regular contact with her family back in Vancouver, updating them on her travels. January 31st was the last time she spoke to her parents. The conversation was normal. She told them about her day, her plans, the things she'd seen. She sounded fine. Maybe a little tired, but nothing concerning. They made plans to talk again the next day. But that call never came. When Elisa didn't call on February 1st, her parents became worried. They tried calling her cell phone repeatedly. No answer. They waited. Maybe she was busy. Maybe her phone was dead. Maybe she'd lost track of time. But by February 2nd, their concern turned to panic. Elisa hadn't contacted them in 2 days. This was completely unlike her. She had promised to check in daily. Her parents contacted the Los Angeles Police Department and filed a missing persons report. The LAPD began investigating immediately. They went to the Cecil Hotel and spoke with staff. Yes, Elisa Lam was registered as a guest, room 506, but no one had seen her in a couple of days. Her room was accessed. Her belongings were still there, her luggage, her clothes, her laptop, but Elisa was gone. Police reviewed security footage from the hotel. The last confirmed sighting of Elisa Lam was in the hotel lobby on January 31st. After that, nothing. Except for one piece of footage. One strange, unsettling video from an elevator security camera. The timestamp showed January 31st, but the exact time has never been publicly confirmed. Some sources say it was early evening. Others suggest it might have been late at night. But the video itself, those 4 minutes of bizarre behavior, would become the most analyzed piece of evidence in the entire case. Police distributed Elisa's photograph to media outlets. Missing person flyers were posted around downtown Los Angeles. Her family flew to LA to join the search. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood. They interviewed hotel staff, guests, local business owners. They searched the hotel from top to bottom, every floor, every storage room, every maintenance area. Nothing. Elisa Lam had seemingly vanished into thin air. In mid-February, the LAPD made a decision. They released the elevator footage to the public, hoping someone might recognize Elisa or provide information about what happened to her. The video went viral almost immediately. People were disturbed by what they saw, the odd behavior, the hand gestures, the way she kept looking out into the hallway as if afraid of something. Theories exploded across the internet. Was she running from someone? Was she having a mental health crisis? Was she under the influence of drugs? Was she possessed? Amateur detectives froze frames, analyzed her hand movements, tried to read her lips. Some claimed she was mouthing words. Others saw supernatural entities in the shadows. The video became an obsession, and it remains, to this day, one of the most haunting pieces of footage in true crime history. But while the internet theorized, the police continued their investigation, and they were about to make a horrifying discovery. February 19th, 2013, nearly 3 weeks after Elisa Lam was last seen. Guests at the Cecil Hotel had been complaining for days about problems with the water. The water pressure was low. The water coming from the taps was discolored, with a strange taste and odor. Some guests reported that the water had a foul, almost sweet smell. Others said it tasted metallic. Several guests had stopped using the tap water entirely, buying bottled water instead. Hotel maintenance staff investigated the building's water system. The Cecil, like many old buildings, had water tanks on the roof that supplied the hotel. These tanks were large, cylindrical containers, several feet high and several feet in diameter. On February 19th, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez climbed onto the roof to inspect the water tanks. The roof of the Cecil Hotel is not easily accessible. You need a key to unlock the door from the top floor stairwell. There's also a fire escape ladder, but it requires physical effort to climb and would be difficult for most people. Once on the roof, you're greeted by a landscape of old machinery, ventilation units, and the 4 large water tanks that supply the hotel. Santiago Lopez approached one of the tanks and climbed the ladder attached to its side. He reached the top and looked into the open hatch. And there, floating in the water, was a body. Lopez immediately called the police. Within minutes, the Cecil Hotel was swarming with LAPD officers, fire department personnel, and emergency responders. The tank had to be drained. The process took hours. Slowly, carefully, they removed the water and prepared to extract the body. When they finally pulled her out, there was no question about the identity. It was Elisa Lam. She was naked. Her clothes and personal belongings, her watch, her room key, were found floating in the tank with her. The water tank was not small. It was approximately 4 feet in diameter and 8 to 10 feet tall. The opening at the top was about 2 feet wide, covered by a heavy metal lid that should have been closed but was found open. How did Elisa Lam end up inside a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel? That question would drive investigators, journalists, and the public to search for answers. And the answers they found were disturbing, contradictory, and incomplete. Let's start with the autopsy. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office conducted a thorough examination of Elisa's body. They were looking for signs of trauma, evidence of foul play, anything that might explain how and why she died. The autopsy results were released in June 2013, several months after the discovery. Cause of death: accidental drowning. There were no signs of physical trauma. No bruises, no cuts, no defensive wounds, no evidence of sexual assault, no signs of a struggle. Toxicology tests showed prescription medications in her system, medications she had been prescribed for her bipolar disorder and depression. But the levels were within therapeutic ranges. There were no illegal drugs, no alcohol, no signs of overdose or poisoning. The official conclusion: Elisa Lam drowned accidentally. Her bipolar disorder was listed as a significant condition contributing to her death. And that should have been the end of it. A tragic accident. A young woman suffering from mental illness, disoriented, or in crisis, somehow made her way to the roof, climbed into a water tank, and drowned. Sad, unfortunate, but explainable. Except it didn't explain everything. How did Elisa access the roof? The door was locked and required a key. The fire escape was difficult to climb. Hotel staff insisted that guests couldn't easily reach the roof. How did she climb onto the water tank? It was several feet off the ground, requiring a ladder to access. How did she remove the heavy metal lid covering the tank opening? It was not lightweight. It would require significant physical effort. Why was she naked? Where were her clothes? If she undressed before entering the water, why? If someone else removed her clothes, who? And most importantly, if this was an accident, why did she exhibit such strange behavior in the elevator footage just before her disappearance? These questions turned a closed case into an ongoing mystery, and they spawned countless theories about what really happened to Elisa Lam. Let's talk about that elevator video, because it's the most crucial piece of evidence we have, and it's been interpreted in 100 different ways. The footage is 4 minutes long, black and white, grainy, time-stamped January 31st, 2013. The exact time is partially obscured but appears to be late evening or night. Let me walk you through it, second by second. 000-010. Elisa enters the elevator from the right side of the frame. She's wearing a red hoodie, dark pants, and sandals. She has long, dark hair. She walks into the elevator casually, stands near the control panel. 010-020. She presses multiple buttons. We can't see exactly which ones, but her hand moves up and down the panel, suggesting she's pressing several floors. This is odd. Why would a guest press multiple floors? Some theorists suggest she was trying to prevent the elevator from reaching a specific floor. Others think she was confused or disoriented. 020-045. The elevator doors don't close. Elisa stands inside, waiting. She looks out into the hallway. Then she moves to the corner of the elevator, pressing herself against the wall near the doors as if hiding. This is where the footage becomes unsettling. She seems to be hiding from something or someone. 045-110. Elisa steps out of the elevator slightly, peering down the hallway to her left, then to her right. She looks cautious, almost frightened. She steps back into the elevator, stands in the center, then moves back to the corner again. 110-200. She steps fully out of the elevator, standing just outside the doors in the hallway. She makes strange hand gestures, rapid movements with her fingers, hands moving up and down, almost like she's counting or gesturing to someone out of frame. Some people see these gestures as communication. Others think they're evidence of psychosis or a manic episode. Still others insist she's performing some kind of ritual or responding to hallucinations. 200-230. The hand gestures continue. She moves her arms, bends her wrists, makes fluid motions. To some viewers, it looks like she's talking to someone. To others, it looks like she's deeply confused or distressed. 230-310. Elisa steps back slightly, then forward again. She puts her hands to her head, runs them through her hair. She seems agitated. Then she suddenly jumps or skips in place, a strange, childlike movement. 310-345. She walks out of frame to the left. The elevator remains empty, doors still open. For about 30 seconds, nothing happens. The hallway is empty. Some people claim to see shadows or figures during this empty hallway section. Others see nothing unusual. 345-400. The elevator doors finally close. The elevator begins to move, going through several floors based on the indicator lights. The footage ends. So what does this footage show? Interpretation 1. Mental health crisis. Elisa Lam had bipolar disorder. The elevator behavior could be consistent with a manic episode, psychosis, or severe disorientation. The hand gestures might be responding to hallucinations, visual or auditory. The hiding behavior could be paranoia. Mental health professionals who have reviewed the footage have noted that the behaviors are consistent with psychiatric distress. The rapid movements, the apparent conversation with unseen entities, the erratic actions, all could indicate Elisa was experiencing a serious mental health crisis. If this is correct, it's heartbreaking. It shows a young woman in distress, alone, with no one to help her. Interpretation 2, being followed. Some people believe Elisa was hiding from someone in that hallway. She's clearly checking to see if the coast is clear. She's hiding in the corner. She's cautious. But if someone was following or threatening her, why didn't they appear on camera? The elevator footage shows the hallway entrance. Anyone approaching would be visible. Some theorists suggest the person was already on the same floor, staying out of camera range. Others think the footage was edited to remove evidence of another person. Interpretation 3, under the influence. Could Elisa have been drugged? Her autopsy showed no illegal drugs, but some substances metabolize quickly and might not appear in tests conducted weeks later. Could someone have slipped her something that caused disorientation and bizarre behavior? It's possible, but there's no direct evidence to support this. Interpretation 4, game or prank. This is a less common theory, but some people have suggested Elisa might have been playing a game, perhaps an elevator game based on internet urban legends, or hiding from someone as part of a prank. The elevator game is a folklore ritual that supposedly allows players to travel to another dimension. It involves pressing elevator buttons in a specific sequence. Some theorists think Elisa was attempting this. But this seems unlikely given what happened to her. Here's what I think the footage shows. Elisa Lam was experiencing something, whether it was a mental health crisis, paranoia, confusion, or genuine fear. Her behavior suggests distress. She's not acting normally. The question is, what triggered this behavior? Was it internal, a psychiatric episode, or external, a real threat? We may never know for certain, but this video is the last time we see Elisa alive, and whatever happened next, it led to her death in that water tank. Let's examine the theories about what happened to Elisa Lam, starting with the official conclusion from the Los Angeles Police Department and the coroner's office. The official theory: accidental drowning during a mental health crisis. According to investigators, here's what likely happened. Elisa Lam was experiencing a bipolar episode or psychotic break. This explains her behavior in the elevator, the paranoia, the hallucinations, the erratic movements. In her confused state, she somehow gained access to the roof of the Cecil Hotel. Maybe she found an unlocked door. Maybe an employee left it open. Maybe the hotel's security was lax enough that she was able to get there despite the supposed restrictions. Once on the roof, she encountered the water tanks. In her disoriented condition, she climbed onto one of the tanks, removed the lid, and either accidentally fell in or deliberately entered the water. The water was cold, the tank was deep, she couldn't climb back out, the walls were too high and slippery. She drowned. Her nakedness is explained by a phenomenon sometimes seen in hypothermia cases called paradoxical undressing, where people remove their clothing due to confused thermoregulation. In Elisa's case, she may have removed her clothes while in the water or before entering it, due to her disoriented mental state. This theory is supported by several facts. 1. Elisa had a documented history of bipolar disorder. She had struggled with mental health throughout her life. 2. Her medication levels were not consistent with her prescribed regimen. Toxicology showed she had some medications in her system, but not all of them, and not at the expected levels. This suggests she may not have been taking her medications properly, which could trigger an episode. 3. There were no signs of foul play, no trauma on her body, no evidence of struggle, no defensive wounds. 4. The hotel staff, when interviewed, said Elisa had been exhibiting odd behavior in the days before her disappearance. This is why she was moved from the shared dormitory room to a private room. 5. Elisa's blog posts and online writings showed signs of depression and struggle in the months before her trip. While she was excited about traveling, she was also in a difficult mental health period. The official conclusion, then, is a tragedy of mental illness. A young woman, far from home, experiencing a crisis with no support system nearby. She became disoriented, made her way to the roof, and accidentally drowned. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but it's a story that happens more often than we'd like to admit. People with mental illness in crisis, dying in preventable accidents because they weren't getting the help they needed. If you accept this theory, the case is closed. It's a tragedy, yes, but not a mystery, just a deeply unfortunate accident. But many people don't accept this theory. They point to the inconsistencies, the unanswered questions, the strange details that don't quite fit. Let me present some of those concerns. Concern 1, roof access. Hotel management insisted that the roof was secured. The door from the top floor stairwell required a key card or special access. An alarm would sound if someone opened it without authorization. But somehow Elisa got to the roof, and if the door was locked, how? The hotel later admitted that security at the Cecil was not perfect. It was an old building with multiple access points. It's possible Elisa found an unlocked door or that an employee failed to secure it properly. But it's also possible someone else had access to the roof and brought her there. Concern 2, the water tank. Getting into that water tank was not easy. You had to climb a ladder to reach the top of the tank. Then you had to remove a heavy metal lid. Then you had to fit through an opening about 2 feet wide and drop into the water below. Could a disoriented person in crisis accomplish all of this? Maybe. But it requires a series of deliberate actions that seem inconsistent with someone who's completely out of touch with reality. Concern 3, the behavior chain. If Elisa was in a severe mental health crisis, wouldn't hotel staff have noticed something more alarming than just odd behavior? Wouldn't someone have called for help, contacted her family, suggested she see a doctor? The fact that she was simply moved to another room suggests her behavior, while unusual, wasn't seen as dangerous or requiring intervention. So what changed between being moved to a new room and ending up in the water tank? Concern 4, the timeline. The elevator footage shows Elisa on January 31st. Her body was found on February 19th. She had been in the water for up to 19 days. During that time, guests were drinking and bathing in water that had been contaminated by her body. This is horrific to think about, but it also raises a question. Why didn't anyone at the hotel notice something was wrong sooner? The water pressure dropped. The water looked and smelled bad. Guests complained multiple times, yet it took almost 3 weeks before someone checked the tanks. Was the hotel negligent, or was something more sinister at play? These concerns have led many people to reject the official explanation and look for alternative theories. And some of those theories are disturbing. The second major theory, Elisa Lam was murdered. This is the theory that much of the internet has embraced, fueled by the elevator footage, the hotel's dark history, and the many unanswered questions in the case. If Elisa was murdered, who did it? And why? Let's explore the possibilities. Theory 2A, a random hotel guest. The Cecil Hotel in 2013 was not a safe place. It was located in Skid Row, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Many of its guests were people living on the margins, some with criminal histories, some struggling with addiction or mental illness. Could one of the other guests have targeted Elisa? Could someone have followed her, gained her trust, or overpowered her and killed her? This theory suggests Elisa's elevator behavior shows she was afraid of someone specific. She's hiding, checking the hallway, acting like someone who's being stalked or threatened. Perhaps someone followed her from the elevator, confronted her, and either forced her to the roof or lured her there. Once on the roof, they killed her and disposed of her body in the water tank to hide the crime. Evidence for this theory. The elevator behavior does look like someone who's scared or being followed. The fact that Elisa ended up in such a bizarre location suggests foul play rather than accident. The water tank would be an effective way.